The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
And we're back for episode 5 with Mike Beyer here in Elvis Presley's dressing room at the Westgate Resort in the International Showroom. So, Mike, we got about 25 minutes before we got to pack it up and get out of here. They got another function, I guess, going to be starting today. So anyhow, we're
so much pressure,
here.
Man. So much.
Yeah, there's more episodes we can do later. We can schedule another time to finish it off. There's no limit on the episodes, just time on how many we can do in a day. So, where were we at?
Oh, God. We'd been talking about Jubilee,
Oh, yeah.
which was an interesting experience.
You were there 8 years, you said?
8.5. I was there 8.5.
That's a pretty good run right there.
Yeah, and then, they were going to close it, and all kinds of wacky stuff happened.
So you know Todd Babcock pretty good then, right?
Yeah, a bit.
He's the head lighting here, so.
Yeah, we had people, obviously that had been around this hall forever that were there. We had Louie and George, who's, still around, and it was a crazy time. Thank God I was there when Fluff was there. That was a pretty amazing time. She was awesome, and she's an icon. She left there at like 85, I think. But one of the interesting things that she actually trusted me to do, and it was pretty cool, was her father's memoirs. He had done a whole series on cassette tape of memoirs. Like, it was hours and hours of stuff. And he was a really interesting character, man. Had done a lot of stuff, had been around different places in the world. And you could see where she got her, I don't know, just her whole view of the world and just a lot of confidence from. And she'd been so many places and done things, and he, was obviously the driver of that. But she came to me one day and said, look, I want to get these digitized. This is all on analog cassette tape. I don't know how long this will last. Can you do this for me? She goes, I will pay you. And so I did it while I was there on makeup time. It's pretty funny because, we were doing makeup time there. And, all you stagehands, that were around back when that was actually happening know what that is. So, anyway, and she personally gave me some money to do it too. But it was really interesting, because I had to check on it, make sure how it sounded. She goes, feel free to listen all you want, like this isn't, we don't have to sign any NDAs or anything, but it was really cool. And it was something that, was for her was a big deal that she had someone that she could trust to do it, which was nice, and she was always really good to me. But it was so funny because we would go to do rehearsals, or especially, we didn't do that many rehearsals, but we did lots of we'd have to do auditions every 6 months, that kind of stuff. And it was always, okay, get ready for her. So we had to do the Fluff special, which was you ran a wired switch mic to the chair she was in, you set it there, and then you had to put an ashtray there. Even though it is absolutely illegal to smoke in showrooms, she would smoke because she was the queen.
Yep.
And it was just so, it was almost like an honor to do that all the time. And I really liked her a lot. She was great.
Someone like that here was Tommy, Smothers Brothers. Tommy.
Oh my God.
Tommy smoked. And, he, and I knew that, so I had an ashtray for him and set up. And so I put it out there, the ashtray on the little table that they wanted to rehearse some numbers, some new stuff, then just some songs and stuff, and get their timing back. I guess they hadn't been doing anything for a few months, and they just wanted to get tight again. So I put a little ashtray on a little table, and a bottle of water and a couple things, and towel and that. And Tommy's over there, and he lights up. He's smoking for a little bit, puts it down, and he goes back with Dick, and they start working on songs and doing their thing. And one of the bosses here goes to me and says, "There's no smoking in here." I said, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "But Tommy's smoking." I went, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "Where did you get the ashtray?" I said, "Oh, I gave it to him." and and they're like, well, he can't be smoking in here. I said, yeah, I know. And they go tell him he can't smoke. And I went, no, you tell him he can't smoke.
Exactly. You do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
You drop the bomb, buddy.
He's right there. Go ahead. I don't tell stars they can or can't do something.
Yeah, that's not our job.
It's Frank Sinatra was the same thing. Frank smoked out on stage. You gonna tell Frank Sinatra he can't smoke out on stage? Yeah, I dare you.
Yep.
I triple dog dare you. Let's just start right to the top. Triple dog.
I'm glad you brought that up. You reminded me because I was trying to remember some more Hilton stories, some more Hilton theater stories. And I remember the Smothers Brothers so well. That was, man.
That was such a fun show.
Dude, that show, and then, oh my God, the whole thing with Lyle and, not Lyle, sorry, my brain. With Harvey.
Oh, Tim and Harvey.
Oh my God, Tim and Harvey. I don't know why I was thinking Lyle Wagner. With Tim and Harvey, man, we were so lucky to even be witness to those shows. Tim and Harvey were amazing, and then of course the Smothers Brothers. Man, it's like it was.
It was magic stuff going on there. I still have the Dorf, the golf when he do the golf. I still have the thing. It's still hanging up in one of the rafters. The setup for that. It's still there.
That's so awesome.
They're both dead, but it's like I still got it sitting up there. And
remember Dorf Goes Fishing? Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Remember the crazy fish finder voice?
Yeah.
When they had like a fish finder voice, and it's like,
Who was that?
My buddy did that voice. My buddy from back home.
Okay, good deal.
He actually worked on that video for Tim. The Dorf Goes Fishing. He said the Dorf Goes Fishing video.
Yeah, Dorf did all these different things. It was funny when he went golfing. That was hilarious.
Oh my God, yeah. But do you still have your jacket?
I have it put away someplace. Yeah.
Yeah, I have it too. Remember when Tim like I need your address, and I go, what? And he's like, I'm going to send you something. And he sent us those jackets. That was so cool.
Yeah, it was. They were great to work with. Harvey Korman. You're working with Harvey Korman from Blazing Saddles.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I mean, just the stuff they had worked on. And Tim Conway, obviously, they were both on Carol Burnett, and they both did. And Tim did Apple Dumpling Gang and all these other crazy movies. Gus and
oh yeah. Dude, McHale's Navy.
Remember that? I'm going through it trying to remember some more. Show. And it was just so great working with these guys that were they were just like mellow as can be. Tim said, okay, we need to put this over here. But, if you don't get it over there, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Dude, Tim was the nicest guy.
It was like he's been around so long, nothing was going to faze him at all.
And he set up his own props. Remember that?
Yep.
He set up his own props. It was like Ed had helped get him stuff over there, but Tim was like, I got this.
Yeah, he'd sit there. He'd take his little case, his steamer case, basically open it up and start just setting out everything exactly how he wanted it. And like, Tim, we can get that for you. And he goes, no, I'll get it. It just gave him something to do. He was awesome. I loved Tim Conway on that stuff.
It was always an honor to work those shows.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the same. I mean, it was just like there was nothing like that. And then the Smothers Brothers, oh my God, those guys. And what was the guy's name? The bass player guy?
Dick.
No. The guy that was their guy that set everything up. Do you remember him? God, why can't I remember his name? He was actually one of the bass players in the Wrecking Crew.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Oh my heavens.
He was like the last guy to play bass, like in that Wrecking Crew kind of.
Oh my heavens! I didn't know that.
I learned a lot more about him. I actually been to his house with my kids because he lives down there, like near San Diego. We're a great guy. What was his name though? God, why can't I remember? It'll come. I
can see his face, and I can't remember him.
Yeah, he was always the guy that like put all that stuff together. And then remember opening for those guys. Remember Gary Muelder?
Gary did Johnny Mathis.
No, but he opened for some Smothers Brothers for a while too.
Okay, yeah, it was him. I think he did a couple times, but it was Ron Lucas, the ventriloquist. Mm-hmm. He did that.
Didn't he open for some Smothers Brothers though? Either that or my memory's just failing me here.
I don't remember Gary. Gary, I do remember he was always there with Johnny Mathis.
Well, because I remember him with Mathis from Caesars, because I used to work with Gary over there a bunch. And when he saw me here, it was great. He was like, "Oh my God, it's you! Thank God!" And he actually, and it was funny because I hate to say this, he was a guy that never tipped back in the day, and he wasn't like making a fortune, I'm sure.
No.
But when we were here, he would tip me. He'd be like, "Man, thank you. I'm so glad you're here." It was like, because again, I knew him from back then.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was probably making more money at that point. But what a nice guy. Gave me his CDs and stuff. I mean, and I grew up watching that guy and Johnny Carson, man. My dad and I used to watch him. Do you remember that back in the day?
Yep.
Mule Deer on friggin', Carson had him on at least a couple times a year. But anyway, it was the Smothers Brothers thing. One of the coolest moments with that was, Tommy'd come out, have a glass of wine sometimes. He'd be watching the opener every once in a while, or he'd come out there afterwards. I remember one time him and I finally had a conversation, because the first few times they were, here when I was here, we didn't really talk much. But then Tom kind of was more kind of, out and about. And one day we were talking, and he had talked about, running track at San Jose State. And I said, my dad was an athlete at San Jose State too. And he goes, "Really? When?" So I told him, and he goes, "Well, I guess we were probably there at the same time." I said, "My dad played baseball for them." And he goes, "Oh my God, really?" And then him and I just, we talked all the time after that, a little, little bits here and there. But it was just cool just to be able to talk to a guy that was like an icon. Again, I grew up watching him. He was always on Carson. They were always on Carson too. And I watched their show, back in the day. Watching Keith Moon blow up his drum kit and all that good stuff. But it was just so cool. And then, oh, that's right. And then they have a winery. Was it there? I don't think I ever got a chance to go to their winery. But I did go to? Remember when we had the Doobies here?
Yeah.
So we had the Doobie Brothers, and their manager had his own winery, which was actually pretty famous. And I remember one time I got there right like 10, 15 minutes before closing. I was, on vacation in NorCal because I grew up there. And I remember I got to the winery and they go, no, we're going to close. And I'm like, "But you're still open." And they're like, "No." And I dropped the name of the owner. It was Bruce Cohn. And they go, "You know Bruce?" And I go, "Yeah, I just worked with him like 2 weeks ago." And they're like, "Oh." And then they made a phone call, and he's like, "Give him whatever he wants." So it was great. They go, "Come on in," and they're like, "Just stay as long as you want and have some wine." And I was like, "This is cool," because Bruce goes, "Stop by the winery, man. Check it out. It's great." And he had good wine, which helped. But that was fun. And then Kenny, when Kenny Rogers was here, remember his manager? Because that guy's famous. It was pretty trippy. He used to manage Burt Reynolds. It was was it Ken Casey?
I can't remember.
It's Ken something, but it might have been Ken Casey. But anyway, guy was hilarious. Told me all kinds of crazy stories about managing Burt Reynolds and how crazy Burt was, and just always entertaining every time he was here. It's those kind of little insights that you get in the stories from people. That's the other moments that are kind of cool. Even if it's managers, whatever. There was always something to be gleaned from what we were doing. Besides putting the show in, it was always that bonus stuff. But he used to tell me crazy Burt Reynolds stories, and because he managed Burt and Kenny for quite a while, and he was with Kenny forever.
That's not a bad combination. You're going to work a lot doing that.
Yeah, but he said Burt was a handful. Always. He was a crazy man.
He doesn't come across that way. Not.
Yeah. And remember Kenny and he'd take people's cameras and take pictures of them.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. He'd
It's like, why not?
Audience members would be holding up cameras, and Kenny would reach down and grab their cameras from them and take pictures of them.
Standing there looking at him.
Looking at him, which was hilarious.
And then you got to tell your friends, no, Kenny really took that.
Yeah.
No, that was at the show. That Kenny took that. He grabbed my camera and took it. Seriously.
He knew that would be a very strange conversation piece,
Yeah.
so he would do that.
That would be a funny conversation there.
Oh my God.
So you were here when we did Commodores and Righteous Brothers and all those, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, Righteous Brothers. Yeah, we did a couple of those shows. Yeah, that's right. I worked with them at MGM as well.
They were fun.
But Commodores. Oh my God. Do you remember that?
Ugh. Pyro hell.
Oh, dude, and all that F-100, all that fog. Oh, and then we're doing that, and then Richard, remember Richard, the entertainment director?
Yeah.
Richard came to me and he goes, "I hate the way these guys sound. You need to fix this." Richard would do that, and he goes, "You need to fix this," and I'm like, "They have their own sound guy. I don't care." He's like, "You need to fix this." So he would impose his will on them and it was like, this guy is gonna mix tonight. And the poor guy that was mixing them wasn't the world's greatest mixer, great guy. And I had to get to this point where he was comfortable with me doing that, even though I didn't have a choice. That was a whole nother weird thing. And then the night that they forced me into mixing Pat Benatar, do you remember that? No. Oh my God. So Pat came in, Pat and Neil, of course, and Neil. And Neil would always make sure that, his guitar had to be always heard, like, over everything. And he had this sound guy that was the nicest guy. And I'm sure he was a pretty good sound guy, but he didn't really get to show it because basically it was put Neil way out front and then Pat's kind of hovering in the background somewhere. And Richard was there. And Richard goes, "I didn't pay to hear that guy's guitar. I paid to hear her voice, and I can't hear her voice." He goes, "You need to fix this, Mike." And I'm like, what? These are things that people don't know, things that every once in a while happen behind the scenes. And Richard, that was a really weird case. I've never had that happen anywhere else except for with him. Yeah. And he goes, "Take over." He goes, and I'm like, "Richard, man, I can't tell that guy he can't mix his own show." And it was funny. The guy's name was Joe Walsh. It was some other guy whose name was Joe Walsh. It was pretty funny. And he was the nicest guy. I said, "Man, he wants to hear this." And he goes, "Dude, I can't push her vocal up." And he goes, "You can do it." He goes, "But I can't." He goes, "You just have to say that, they told you to do it." And I'm like, okay. So I took over, pushed her voice out there, and kind of balanced the mix so it sounded like more like one of her records and not the Neil show, featuring Pat Benatar in the background. That was an interesting time.
I mean, granted, he wrote a lot of those songs. But come on.
No, and I'm a Neil fan from way back, and from him when he was with Rick Derringer, all that stuff.
But she had the
they're there to hear her.
Her hits. They're her hits.
It's like,
granted, you wrote them, you wrote them with her or whatever your guys' routine was,
and produce all that.
And all that. Great, that's awesome. But it's her voice is what people came to see.
Well, and the irony is he produced those records, so he's the one that put her, she had to put her out front. He had to make sure she was out front in the record. So it's like, why don't you do this more like one of your records? Why is she in the background? That was a very interesting and very uncomfortable position to be put in.
Yeah, and sometimes I got to understand it's that's even in their contracts and stuff like that. It says we have total control. This is the artist says we have total control. Blah blah blah. It'll be the way we want it. Well, that only works to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But
especially when they're paying a bunch of money for the show.
Yeah, when you're laying out $50,000 for a show for that night, you're the boss.
Yeah.
50, 100, whatever it's going to be. Who it is, But yeah, interesting stuff. You mentioned the F-100s. That's a fog machine. That's a smoke machine.
Yeah.
And remember how bad it was at one point, and all of a sudden it didn't get. It kind of mellowed out.
Yeah.
I didn't ever tell anybody really what I did. I opened up the fire hatches.
That's what I was going to say. Was it the emergency fans?
Yeah, the emergency fans and the smoke elimination fans for the fire control system. Popped those open because they had so much smoke.
Dude, my eyes were burning.
And the pyro and everything. And so,
I put on a paint mask one night.
yeah. And so I popped those 4 fans on, man, cut them things cranking, pulling that air out of there. And I had to shut it down a little bit because it got so bad. The smoke was coming out of the machine going straight up. and what's his name?
David, their guy. Remember David?
David Fish.
Oh my God.
He was getting so pissed off. Where's my smoke going? I was like, ooh, I better turn a couple fans off.
See, that's the bummer when your manager is your lighting guy.
And the trucking company, he owns your stage, he owns the lighting, he owns the sound, he owns,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was tough.
yeah.
But it was great. Again, it was the Commodores, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that was awesome working with those guys. And the only thing we would have made that anything better would have been Lionel been in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Just on one show even. Just to say you got to work with Lionel, that would have been cool.
That would have been cool. And then those guys, so funny. Clyde, you are an FOC, and I go, what's an FOC? Friend of the Commodores. He was happy I was mixing, I guess. It was cool. They were always super nice to me.
Yeah.
But it was just so weird to be forced into that seat, because Richard's like, no, I don't want their guy doing this. I was like, you're here, just be there and take, don't touch the console, just take the night off and collect your paycheck. I mean, and he was there, but poor guy's just like sitting there doing nothing, and I felt bad for him. But Richard had his own way of doing things, and I see what he was getting at, but it was really a weird position to be put in.
Yeah.
But I guess he had a lot of faith in me, which is good, I guess. Much to some other people's chagrin, but those were amazing times. And God, we did hundreds of those Commodore shows. My God.
And bunch of they're just all good. It was so good working on. That was a good time. That was, I think. What year was that? You came over here in 01?
01, yeah.
So that was.
That's probably right around 02.
Okay, so you were in here doing all the NFR stuff and all that. And
yeah. Oh yeah.
That was some amazing times. Those NFR weeks were just amazing.
Man, all that time with Brad Paisley and Brooks and Dunn, who God, Baja, may he rest in peace. Wow. Did you hear about that story?
No, I didn't.
So Baja died stepping off a stage.
Oh,
he stepped off the front of a stage, somehow fell off of it, which is weird because, he's been in the business 35 years at least. Stepped off a stage somewhere, fell off the front, and died from the impact. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I just heard about that, I don't know, a handful of years ago. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Because I read it in the news. I was like, just like stunning. But, we had Brooks and Dunn, and then Keith Urban was great. And then, of course, Brad
Paisley was awesome.
And his dad. Remember his dad? Brad's dad was always here with him every time he was here. And he'd always be he'd come out there to me. And I don't know if he ever talked to you guys, but he was always there watching the show. And he's like, do you have the newest CD? No? Okay, here. And he would always bring me stuff, merch, and just the nicest guy.
Yeah. Those country acts were all really good. I loved working the country acts too. They were just down to earth. They were.
And Winona and my buddy John Cooper was mixing her, who's now been mixing Springsteen for like 20 years. Remember, we were here the week that John found out. He goes, dude, the gig I wanted my whole life. I just got it. He goes, don't say anything yet because I haven't told everybody. He goes, but I got Springsteen. I got the boss. And so he started mixing him, while he was here or whatever. He got the gig, and then he's been with him ever since. And then I just worked with him out here a couple of years ago on National Association of Home Builders. The Doobies played, and he was a sub for the Doobies mixer.
Okay.
And all of a sudden he shows up, and I'm like, what are you doing here, man? Him and my old bass tech from Def Leppard was the production manager. And then my old lighting guy I grew up with back home was the lighting guy. It was like one of those old home weeks, you know.
Showbiz it's not a huge family. I mean, you meet everybody over and over again, but oh, now you're working for them. Oh, now
Yeah.
you're working for them, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, you're working for Leonard Skinner. You're working,
You're
for the
doing
Doobies.
whatever it is. Yeah, it's just you just go from different bands to different groups to different shows, whatever it may be. And well, Mike, that's about the end of today. I've got to get this stuff put away and get out of here before they get the next whatever they're doing in here. I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
But I want to thank you for coming in. And
You're very welcome. Thank you.
It's been fun. It's been. We'll have to do some more. We'll find some time. Come in. We'll do some more episodes to catch up to because we only got to what 2007 or so.
Something like that. 2000.
Yeah, we got about 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So I got about 18 years ago of filling in some stuff that's gone on. So anyways, we'll look forward to doing that, and we'll find a time to do it and continue on. Until then, Talbot, take it away.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.